morning, everybody. We are back with day 132 of our Jesus on Every Page Bible reading plan. We are diving into Ecclesiastes today. We're in Ecclesiastes 1 through 3, Psalm 45, and 2 Timothy 1. Ecclesiastes is very importantly paired with Proverbs. We'll get there. But Ecclesiastes is also, it seems, written by Solomon. It very much seems to be written later in his life, and we'll get to some reasons for that as we go through it. The author identifies himself as the Hebrew word Koheleth. It's translated as the preacher or the announcer in most translations. It could also mean the collector or the one who convenes, like the one who brings something to a start. It's a pseudonym for the writer, we think Solomon, that points to someone who has gathered wisdom and is now dispensing it to others. But unlike Proverbs, where it's kind of how can your life go well, what does it look like for your life to go well, and how do you move in that direction? Ecclesiastes is the wisdom of one who knows that sometimes your life is going to go bad. And how do we adjust? How do we find meaning in a life that can be hard sometimes? That one of the main words in the book of Ecclesiastes is vanity. I think it's almost always, in most English translations, it's translated as vanity, but the easiest words for it in English would actually probably be fleeting or elusive. It's actually a visual image. It's the image of a mist or a vapor that disappears when the sun comes up. It is your breath in the wind on an icy day. So when Ecclesiastes talks about vanity, it is using a visual image of a mist that disappears quickly. And Ecclesiastes is this, I mentioned earlier, is this great pair with Proverbs. And I think you can see that just from Ecclesiastes 1:15 versus Proverbs 3:5. So Ecclesiastes 1:15 is, what is crooked cannot be made straight. What is lacking cannot be counted. As opposed to Proverbs 3:5, which is famously, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will make your paths straight. So it's interesting here, what is crooked cannot be made straight in Ecclesiastes versus God will make your paths straight. And Proverbs really it's showing that God is the one who makes these miracles happen. That there is a degree to which Proverbs is idealized wisdom. It is the wisdom of God's world where cause and effect directly link to each other. Where doing the right thing always produces the right results, etc., etc. Whereas Ecclesiastes is also wisdom, but it is wisdom from a more wounded and human point of view. Wisdom from a point of view that is wrestling with the hardships of human existence and the seemingly unstoppable force of sinful inertia. It's looking at the world and saying, I can't fix this. So what do I do about it? I think Ecclesiastes 1:18 is hilarious just because it seems like it's probably the source of the idea that ignorance is bliss. The writer says, for in much wisdom is much vexation, and he who increases in knowledge increases in sorrow. Ignorance is bliss. In chapters 2, we see the beginning of a parade of different sources for meaning in life, things that we can go to try and find our meaning, that the author says, I have examined these, and ultimately they all end up wanting or lacking. He talks about pleasure, pleasure or hedonism, just trying to get as much happiness in life as you can. He says ultimately this is empty. He talks about moralism and intelligence, living wisely. He says ultimately this is empty because there are going to be places where your life is hard the same way idiots are. He's just I really love Solomon in Ecclesiastes because he's very down to earth in the sense of like there's going to be stuff that stinks in all these different situations. And then he talks about work and achievement at the end. He talks about how even work, even achievement, even trying to strive after things is ultimately empty as well. In Ecclesiastes 3, you get the famous, there's a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be... Alright, so anyway, that's actually, I mean, if you ever want to go listen to that song while you're reading through Ecclesiastes 3, now is the time. It's great stuff. You get a great quote towards the end of chapter 3 that eternity is placed in man's heart, but that we are not given omniscience, and so mysteries abound. It's this great idea that like we are made for infinity, and yet because of the brokenness of the world, we can't experience that infinity, and we have to look forward to eternity when we get to experience that with God. Talks about the pervasiveness of wickedness in the world, that even in the places where we expect to find righteousness and justice, we can still find wickedness instead. And it talks about it kind of towards the end talks about who can bring a person to see what will be after him. Essentially, like, how are we supposed to find meaning when we don't know what the future holds? And again, even in Ecclesiastes, we see things pointing towards Jesus. Because we need to have faith in something. We need to have hope, and Jesus came to give us those things. The writer of Ecclesiastes says, how should we know the future? How should we? And for us, it's because, well, Jesus told us, and we trust him. So just great stuff there, too. Psalm 45 is a coronation and royal wedding song, which means, again, strong connections to Jesus because it has hints of the wedding supper of the Lamb, that the king's enemies have fallen before him, that the bride has been made pure, that she is glorious. There's a lot of hints here towards what Revelation talks about with the wedding supper of the Lamb, for sure. And then we get into 2 Timothy chapter 1. 2 Timothy is just very, very emotional. I thank God whom I serve, as did my ancestors, with a clear conscience, as I remember you constantly in my prayers day and night. As I remember your tears, I long to see you, that I may be filled with joy. I am reminded of your sincere faith, a faith that dwelt first in your grandmother Lois and your mother Eunice, and now I am sure dwells in you as well. For this reason I remind you to fan into flame the gift of God which is in you through the laying on of my hands. For God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and self-control. I think Paul is very emotionally engaged in all of his writing. I think that's one of his kind of hallmarks of his style as a biblical author. But here in 2 Timothy, we're getting Paul kind of as close to his death as we get him in the Bible. We're seeing him talking on as close a level with his son in the faith as we get in the Bible. And so you just get a strong emotional foundation here for the letter. And I think it's a good urging for us that our relationships in the church can be emotionally tight, and in fact they can be as tight as family. Like, that's not something we should run away from. It's actually something that we should embrace in trying to kind of draw together those that God puts us in contact with within the church as a family, as surrogate brothers and sisters and nieces and nephews and uncles and aunts and grandparents, that we should be drawing each other together as a surrogate family around each other. But if we're going to do that, we have to be both as vulnerable and as committed as we are with family. That's where it comes in, is that we can have this. Like, we can have these kinds of relationships in the church, but we have to value them. We have to sacrifice for them. We have to put the time and effort and energy into them that's going to make them work. We've got some statements here about kind of discipline and hard times in life. Just that we should not believe for a minute that life being hard means that we can talk about that we can't talk about God's favor and love and the care that he has given to us. That both can be true at the same time. That God can care for us, love us, take care of us, and our life can be hard. It is absolutely possible for those things to coexist with one another. And then just closing out, really again, just Paul's most personal letter. Yes, thank you. He's telling stories that they know, but we don't. He's like, oh, you know how... Hey, morning, Finn. He's like, hey, you know how this happened and this happened. Oh, you know how this went over here. We don't know how those things happened or how they went, but Timothy does. Again, it's a very personal letter, naming their common friends and just saying, oh, yeah, you remember these folks. And we're like, we have no idea who they are. But Paul does and Timothy does. And so that's kind of what matters. Hey, we're going to pray. Can you help me pray? God, thank you for today, and thank you for all of the wisdom that you have to share with us. Thank you that you know that life is hard sometimes, and that you love us and are with us and have given us hope in the hard times in life. Help us to remember that all the time, and help us to be people who bring that hope into the lives of others when they need it. Amen. Say amen. All right, we'll be back tomorrow with Ecclesiastes 4 through 6, Psalm 125, and 2 Timothy 2. God bless everybody.